Hello everybody, this is Maniac for Bricks, and I hope you can see it because it's supposed to be the bat signal shining onto a whole bunch of DC superheroes, mostly in the Batman realm, but it's still a whole bunch of them nonetheless. And this one, I just thought, if I got a light on one side, I'll put it on the other side too. So, not only am I showing you a sneak peek on an upcoming project, which is in order to save space but also have a nice display space for minifigures of different LEGO themes, I'm going to put up a whole bunch of matting squares on the back of large base plates like the 32x32s and even fill some space in between in order to display minifigures with LEGO builds. That way I can have themes arranged on a bookshelf or two and have like all the, the figures that I collect for that theme in one spot, and then the vehicles would be underneath them, or even, any play sets or whatever. So that way, it's just kind of like, here's what I've collected, and here's what I like from the theme. Now, I have been collecting a bunch of superhero type of sets for quite a while, and I've noticed that I've actually gotten more of the DC ones than the Marvel ones. I think in most cases it has to do with price or interest or or something like that. And yes, I do count Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as superhero sets, even the ones from the TV show. I think it just fits a lot better that way. So I'm going to be taking a look at what actually is going to be going on the wall by process of elimination. As you saw in the title of the video, this is about what will not be displayed, my lesser favorite of superhero sets. Keep in mind that these are based on ones that I actually own, ones that I've built, ones that I've played with, and also keep in mind that the shelves you see here are not going to be in this complete arrangement. I'm still moving things around, and I'm still trying to figure out what's going to go where. So as you see it here, it's not going to be permanent and doesn't really give you a big hint as far as what's coming up in this video. Also keep in mind that there is no real number countdown for this video. It's just kind of a list, not necessarily this set's worse than this set. They're all just not ones that I like. And, I guess you can kind of figure out the rest because process of elimination, you can figure out which ones I actually do like from the leftovers. So let's go right into the video. The first set I'd like to start with, and keep in mind, I have the instructions, but I have previously, not only I got the set back in 2006, but I also rebought it from eBay with most of the parts for the Bat Dragster itself. Didn't have the figure, didn't have the bike, didn't have the Catwoman, but I have done a whole video from eBay that shows I bought this set. So I'm not just faking it with the instructions, I just don't have the parts available. And I've already taken it apart, so I've already decided way before this video, this is not something I'm going to display. This is set number 7779, the Batman Dragster Cat Cycle Chase. And this is probably one of the least favorite of any superhero sets in my book. Now, first of all, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. Why does Batman have a dragster? In what comic, in what movie, in what TV show, in what media of any kind or circumstance does he use or need a dragster? I think it's really for the set purpose, just to have something at a low price point, something that's bat related, some kind of vehicle to play with, and I don't think there's really any reason for this to exist. From building it, it actually does have a little bit of a loose build to it. There's a lot of hollow space underneath here and even in here. This area has a wheel on it, and the intent is that you can flip this whole thing around and reveal a machine gun. But the problem is you can't roll it that well because the wheel is very loose. If you were to make turns with it, you wind up making a complete sideways turn just because the wheel, it's like a loose shopping cart wheel. It just doesn't go the way you want it to go. Also, I've noticed that in the second version that I picked up of the set, it actually did have this shape of tire, which in the original version of the set that I picked up actually had more of, if I just show back up here, that shape of tire. A little bit of an inconsistency. I don't know if it had to do with the regions in which this was distributed, but I just found that a little bit odd. Also, the Flickfire launchers, it was in the earlier days of them. It wasn't that bad, but it just seemed like an awkward space for it being right next to the wheel. It's almost as awkward a space as the Loki's Cosmic Cube Escape set with the SHIELD vehicle. And really, this is a set that you would absolutely get only for Batman, only for Catwoman. The Catcycle's okay. I think that's okay to have for Catwoman. But Batman, why do you have a dragster? Is it because in future years you're going to race against the Riddler in a dragster? I'm not even sure why the Riddler has a dragster, but let's go on. By the jumbled box of pieces you see here, I think you can figure out that the Spider Train chase is not going to be in the display. I may have called it the wrong thing. Spider-Man Train Chase? Train Rescue? I'm not sure entirely on the name of it, but this is a set that I've intentionally bought. I bought it once through Brinklink and another time through eBay. The eBay listing for it did not have all the figures. In fact, I don't think it had any figures with it, and it only really got it just for parts. Now, I got this so that at the time I could try to test it out and try to make a longer track for the play feature to work with this set. And it does work, it just takes a little bit of engineering to really make it a sturdy track. The thing by itself, as you can see, is very fragile. With a lot of these long pieces and long strides without really connecting things in between them, and sometimes just connecting it to the other rail, it's pretty easy for it to fall apart. That, and I also had some intention for breaking it apart so that I can recreate it on a more modern train track scale. That way I can motorize it and make my own back and forth moving subway car, or two of them, if I were able to make this a little bit larger and make two of them, so that I can make it actually presentable, something much more appealing. I don't really have the track for it right now, but I know the general size of the more modern train tracks, and that should be a lot of fun to do. So I will have to take pieces from this set. I will review it before building the mock, but for right now, it's just sitting in a shamble. Up next, we have a Batman set that, again, doesn't really offer a lot of creativity or usefulness, in my opinion. This set had Mr. Freeze, the original 2006 version, and a Dark Knight version of Batman, which the set was actually released in 2008, but they didn't change Mr. Freeze. That's really the best part about this, are the minifigures and a couple of pieces, but not really the way that they're built. I mean, the set was $10 when it first came out in 2008, and I was really happy about that, because that was like the cheapest way ever to get Mr. Freeze. And in my opinion, I think he's still one of my more favorite versions, not just because he's the first, but because he just looks very intimidating. Alright, so as far as these vehicles, it's called a Batman buggy, or a Bat buggy of some kind. The back portion is just there. All that's really holding it together is this torch piece from Bionicle, and even so, it's a really long flame that really doesn't need to be there for such a short vehicle. It has enough room in here, maybe even a little too much room, to seat Batman. Granted, it does give you enough room so that the cape doesn't wrinkle up or anything like that, but doesn't really do much as far as what you see. You know, it doesn't have any real play features. This doesn't shoot forward or anything. You kind of have to pretend with it, or just, you know, loosen the end of it to make it look like it's shooting forward. You could detach this from the vehicle and use it as a separate weapon for Batman, but you're really not going to get a lot for that. Also, this fin likes to keep waving around because it's only held on by a friction pin. It doesn't really do a lot. So, other than that, this other buggy of some kind for Mr. Freeze is very minimal. You see, this tube on here is something that you could use to attach onto Mr. Freeze and hold his freeze ray. For right now, just for the display that I have, I don't think there's going to be enough room for that tube to fit, so I kind of have it here. But you can also have him holding the gem, and I did a review for this set a while ago. I don't remember if it's still on the channel, because it did have a couple issues other than time, and I think it might have had 1 or 2 copyright issues, so I'm not sure if it's still on there. Maybe I'll redo a review for it if necessary. But just know that this really doesn't serve a lot of purpose. It does have the interesting aspect that you could plug this into this ice machine, which is harnessing a jewel, and use that to plug into the freeze ray. But that's really it. He doesn't even have a steering wheel. This has just enough space to fit Mr. Freeze in here with the... keep in mind, he still has to have the Sub-Zero tanks right behind him. So there is no way for him to actually drive this vehicle as you do with the Bat Buggy. The Bat Buggy has more steering than this thing. Up next, we have a set more recently from Batman, and it was about $13 when it came out in the United States. This one, again, had some pretty interesting minifigures, and even had another build, which I actually will keep on my display. This Tugboat is adorable, and practical, and reminiscent, for me, of Batman Returns, which is just a cool movie. I wouldn't say it's a fantastic movie compared to 89, but it's still a pretty cool one, and I think this is a nice little vehicle for the Penguin outside of the Penguin submarine, which I really do like. Now, the rest of the build here, it has Batman with a scuba gear, which I think is pretty interesting, as we also get Robin with scuba gear in another set, but this sub thing doesn't really do a lot for me. You see, he has the flippers on there, but you could also put the handlebars in there. You can also have him with a harpoon gun. He has flick fire missiles and a printed slope on the front. But the shape of it is just a little bit lackluster. There's really not a lot of building creativity here. I mean, only a little bit with that piece in the middle. But I find it very off-putting, to my eyes, that it's just, you know, elevated. And maybe it's supposed to give the impression that this is supposed to sit in, you know, like it's waving around a little bit in the water while it's, you know, whooshing the vehicle or something. But I don't think it really does a lot for me. And as far as the rest of this, there's just not really a good spot to fit these. Maybe I'll keep the Penguins because I always love how these Penguins are built. Even with the newer line of Series 16 and the Friends Penguins we've had a few years ago, I still like these little guys just for a clever little build. And it also fits a little bit better with the radio that I've already put up with the other, you know, vehicle that came in this set. The Iceberg is not a lot to write home about, but at least gives a little display space for these Penguins. Or should I say robot penguins. Up next, we have a collection of small vehicles from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the Nickelodeon TV show. Now, two of these vehicles on the left are from the Baxter Robot Rampage set. And that was a very impressive set. I really like it. Just by itself, it's a great value for the figures you get. You get April O'Neil, you get Baxter, you get Donatello, you get Raphael, and you get a Mauser. I would have liked it if you got more than one Mauser, because they are something you would have as an army, but I digress. The vehicles here are okay in the set's context, so that you have something to fight the giant robot with. But outside of that, they don't really do much for me. I mean, look at this. There's really not a lot that you build here. It only gives you enough room on the back to fit the skateboard. I'll maybe keep the skateboard around, but I'm going to tear the rest of it apart. You also have room here that you could fit Donnie's bow staff, so that works out okay, but there's really not a lot to this. I think this is supposed to be based on the TV show. There was an episode where the four turtles had vehicles similar to this, but they were much bulkier. They were much more appealing. They had a lot more creativity to them than this does, where it just has wide axles. And the other vehicle here is a plane, which is okay, but I don't think that's something that really fits with the Turtles that well, or at least the way that I look at the Turtles. I always get thrown off by how these look on top. I think it's supposed to look like rocket launchers, but they're not, because the Flickfire ones are underneath it. And it actually does have a neat build in the middle, but it still kind of makes me nervous the way that it's built, because it's still pretty fragile, at least some parts of it. And the propeller is kind of right towards the ground, so it really doesn't do a lot as far as, you know, trying to whisk it into the air. Maybe a little bit, but you're really not going to get a lot with this. So, and I just feel like there are better TMNT vehicles and playset things that I would better fit in that space. Now, I mentioned there was 3 vehicles in this video, or at least this part of the video. This is the other part. I don't know if this is, again, in part of the TV show. This is something Donatello also uses with the Shredder Dragon bike set. And it's very blah. It's just very lackluster. There's not a lot to it. You have room for one accessory to fit there. So even if you use this with other turtles, they won't really work. You could probably use it next with Mikey, but his rest of the nunchuck is just going to be flopping around while you drive this along. So it's best equipped for Donatello. And it just has the lever there, which can be a little bit cumbersome when it tries to, you know, hold the minifigure hand right over it. So it does take a little bit of work to actually fit that on there. And there's just not a lot of, you know, interesting looks to this thing. So 3 vehicles just for that part. Next up, we have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie-based vehicle. This is the truck that carries mutagen and transforms the turtles a little bit more in an almost steroid-like in a steroid-like condition. And the main reason I'm not keeping this, in reality, I really like this truck just as a truck. As it is for the movie, it's okay, but it does take up a bit of space in the interior with all the lab stuff. You can even see I've tried to put it back in there, and it's just piling up on top. I can't even close the lid, but that's just how I threw it in there. But in reality, I want to use this for a lot of other reasons. A lot of the parts in here I've mentioned when I bought this in the haul video. Maybe I was going to review it, and I actually did plan on reviewing it. But I'm actually going to use a whole bunch of these parts with this one. So we're tying it in with the other set that I was rejecting from display. It actually has a train base in there and also a lot of dark bluish gray that I could use for this MOC as well as other MOCs. So it's better left that way. Now, as far as the other part of the build, which is the van, this SUV type thing, maybe. I'm not really sure on that one, if I'm going to keep it as it is, modify it a bit. You can check out more on the Lego Out of Context video for what I did with it, because it was actually pretty good. But I don't know if I'm really going to keep it around as a fully assembled thing. And even just when I do take this apart, I'm not going to do like what I'm going to do with a lot of other sets in this list and put all the pieces into a Ziploc bag and put that in storage, so if I want to rebuild it someday, I can. This one's just like scrapping all the parts, using them completely out of the set's context and for other better things. Because, hey, you gotta do that sometime. And last but not least, we have 3 sets that pretty much have the same idea across all of them. They are very simple builds that don't do anything special with play features and are really unnecessary to the minifigures that they are for. First thing I'd like to mention, my ever-growing and ever-existing rant about spider vehicles. They are just for toys. They are not good for Spider-Man to actually practically use because he has webbing to transport all across town. I have already talked about that in the Spider-Man Glider Polybag review a while ago, and that's also something that's not staying on the shelf. No, that's keeping way out of there. There was a Super Jumper Spider-Man Polybag. I'm probably not going to keep on there as well. Again, doesn't really have any unique play features and just not a great polybag in my opinion. The Symbiote set, it just looks interesting, but I'm not really sure if that's going to fit onto the shelf. Moving on. Batman Jet Ski I did pick up recently because of polybag purpose and collecting and so on, but it really doesn't offer anything and doesn't really fit with other sets. I don't have any other Batboat vehicles, and if I did have a larger Batboat, this might be okay to put with it. At least given the impression that this would be something that would eject from the boat, even though it actually doesn't. Even the 2006 one had that, and it just seems like a cool idea. But on its own, this doesn't really do much for me. The Robin Jet Ski, it's okay looking. It's got a good size, but it actually does have a few little flaws. There's really no play features to this other than opening it up and having this little propeller on the back. Number 2, when you open this up, there is no controls. No joystick, no printed tile, nothing. We've already had printing here and a joystick, and we've also had a joystick or a handle, whatever you want to call it, on that one as well. Second thing, this whole area back here is just for the purpose of wrinkling up Robin's cape, like you fold it in half while he's still wearing it, shoving it in there, and then you seat him back down in there. If you have that on there for a long time, you are going to ruin the cape. And I'm not trying to be too stingy about it, but I've had plenty of capes from Star Wars, especially around 1999, that have worn very, very much over time, wrinkling and fraying at the bottoms. And I just want to kind of preserve some of the other capes. I don't mind if they get a few folds here and there, but nothing too drastic. So that's the end of our video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more LEGO videos. Let me know which ones in the comments below you would have picked, and be sure to stick around for when I do the actual display case with the Collectathon video. We'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.